While RPGs are some of my favorite genre of games, it's pretty rare for different things to be done with them. It's a sort of if the wheel isn't broken, don't fix it sort of genre, and it's obvious with games like Dragon Quest, which hasn't changed much in decades, that people prefer their RPGs this way. As a result, many RPGs play things safe, never straying particularly far from traditional RPG conventions. Child of Light, an RPG created by Ubisoft, is one of these games. You play as Aurora, a young girl who perishes at the start of her story, but awakens soon after in the land of Lemuria. You quickly learn that things are in turmoil, and it's up to you, as a Child of Light, to return things to order. If this sort of storyline sounds familiar to you, that's because it's the same kind of storyline RPGs have been doing for decades. Since Child of Light follows in the footsteps of every other RPG, the question becomes whether Child of Light is a good game in comparison to its peers. Settle down for storytime, kids. We're turning to page 1 of this review of Child of Light. If you couldn't guess by the intro, Child of Light plays by the rules set by many an RPG before it. The combat is an active time gauge, turn-based system, common with games like Final Fantasy. As a result, the character's speed is important, and there's some intricacies to combat. For example, if you're attacked while casting a spell or preparing your offense, you'll be interrupted and penalized, forced earlier into the weight gauge. As a result, being strategic with your defenses, which prevent interruption, make you take less damage, and give you your turn faster as a benefit, is worth considering instead of blindly attacking. The most unique aspect of Child of Light is the inclusion of Igniculus, a firefly that travels with Aurora and her group. Igniculus has various uses in the overworld, like acquiring treasure you can't reach, or stunning overworld enemies so you can pass by them safely or ambush them, but he also has uses in combat as well. If you hover over allies, Igniculus will heal them slowly. If you hover over enemies, you'll slow them down. It's only one ally or enemy at a time, so his usefulness is limited, but he's the most invaluable resource you have in combat. I rarely found myself healing my allies in combat with Igniculus, because the amount healed was low and slowing enemies felt much more beneficial in comparison. Most of the early battles will be fought with Aurora. She's a flexible combatant with decent melee damage and access to some strong offensive spells. Aurora is joined in combat by a plethora of partners. One of these, Rubella, fills the role of cleric, healing allies and defending them from debuffs. Another partner, Finn, fills the mage role, utilizing various elemental spells to take advantage of enemy weaknesses and deal lots of damage. In lieu of a traditional equipment system, Child of Light opts for a simpler oculi system, in which you slot gems into allies for various benefits, such as elemental attacks, defense against elemental attacks, and straight stat boosts. You can combine oculi to create a stronger and more varied product. While the advantages oculi give you aren't huge, there's an obvious strategy to using them to give you an advantage, especially on harder difficulties. Speaking of difficulties, this game has two, casual and expert. I didn't play on casual, but the game insists that it's an easier experience so one can focus on the story. Expert is the same story experience so far as I can tell, but with a genuinely challenging RPG attached to it. It's nice to see expert mode there because the game feels like it has real substance to it on expert mode. Finally, the overworld is where you'll spend much of your time outside of combat, and for the first hour or so, the game offers you some light platforming. Sadly, the platforming aspect of the game disappears because Aurora gains the ability to fly not long into the start of the game. Being able to fly should have been a reward later into the game. If they had given impossible to reach chests better rewards to encourage backtracking when you did have the ability to fly, this could have given Child of Light a nice mild Metroidvania slant. One thing this game does incredibly well is its aesthetics. It has a sort of watercolor kind of look to it that feels very unique, something I've never seen before in a game. After doing some digging, I discovered that the art style for Child of Light was inspired by Studio Ghibli and Yoshitaka Amano art styles. For the uninitiated, Yoshitaka Amano is the same man famous for the design and artwork of many Final Fantasy characters. Besides the amazing aesthetics, Child of Light has a fluidity to it that I can't remember ever seeing from a game before. Combined with the aesthetics, it makes the game more of a work of art than an RPG. At times, it feels like the scenery would be best hung in a gallery, to be quietly admired. This sort of fluidity is most notable with the way Aurora's hair moves in reaction to the player's movements, but it's easy to see it in other aspects of the game. Partners in the game mostly have a unique aesthetic, something refreshing to see in a genre that's often stymied because of its refusal to move away from stereotypes. Rubella, for example, is a jester, and many of her animations evoke acrobatics, though her evasion animation is a bit odd, definitely a strange way to avoid an attack. As far as the music goes, it reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy tunes, which is perfectly fine. Each song in the game sounds spectacular, and some of them are a bit memorable, though it's tough to say if it's memorable because they're good songs or because you hear them a lot. Touching briefly on voice work, what little there is in the game is acceptable. It's obvious that they're trying to tell a story as if reading it from a book, and so a lot of it has that sort of tone to it. Now that we've discussed the pros, it's time to talk about the cons. For starters, the developers clearly created Child of Light as a narrative/visual kind of experience, and so the RPG aspects feel a bit forced in. The longer I played the game, the more I lamented that this wasn't simply a visual novel. Case in point, Ubisoft eventually released a digital book involving the game for its first anniversary. It may have not been about the story of the game, but they clearly knew that it had potential. On the topic of story, Child of Light's plot is very safe and very predictable. For example, early in the game, you arrive at a town full of birds. What is your immediate thought? That A, the developers are fans of Alfred Hitchcock, B, someone lives here alone and loves birds, or C, that people in this town have been cursed and turned into birds and it's up to Aurora to turn them back. If you answered C, congratulations! You've probably played a fantasy RPG in the past. Almost every other major event in the game follows a similar convention. Someone, somewhere, or something is in trouble and it's Aurora's job to save them. I'm not exactly looking for M. Night Shyamalan level plot twists or anything, but this game didn't surprise me a single time. While combat is fine and functions well, there's various things about it and its important systems I had issues with. Partners may look unique, but don't really play unique, because they fill old class stereotypes. You have a healer, a jack of all trades, a mage, a buffer, a debuffer. None of these allies do anything unique that surprised me. It may not be a huge deal since they function coherently, this sort of safety is boring. Worse still, Aurora is an ineffective battler. I poured a lot of relevant Stardust items into her, yet she still seemed to struggle to do anything well. She was outdamaged by Rubella, the healer, and her offensive spells weren't as effective as Finn's. I didn't feel motivated to use Aurora midway through the game when I had safety and damage all at my fingertips, and with only 2 characters. The Oculi system is okay, but at the same time feels pretty lazy. It works fine and they achieved what they were looking to achieve, but I think the game would have had greater depth and more varied rewards than just piles of potions if there was an equipment system. You can argue that Oculi is the equipment system, but where it gives the impression of being deeper than it is, in reality it has the depth and breadth of a puddle. The enemies in the game are also not very diverse. I was fighting the same enemies 3+ hours into the game. When there's enemy diversity, they're rarely unique. I constantly ran into enemies that simply had a different element attached to them, a slight edit to the sprite. This wouldn't be such a big deal if the combat animations didn't leave something to be desired. They're very uninspired and boring, and they felt almost minimalist. Finally, the game has unfortunate performance issues on PC. Except in certain areas, things slowed down and the game ran horribly. I played a few hours this way until I finally found a method that worked. I decreased the resolution of the game window. There's a number of fixes for this issue, but none of them seem to work. Who would have thought that the fix was to decrease my game's window size? For a game that was well received, it seems that the only aspect of the game that's truly praiseworthy is the artwork and aesthetics. Everything else ranges from lackluster to acceptable, but never approaches the standards set by how the game looks. It's as though the developers understood what makes a great RPG, but were so scared to make a bad game that they decided to paint by numbers. As a result, Child of Light is just an average RPG, with average story, decent music, and spectacular visuals. Child of Light has an average playtime around 11 hours, and the price tag on Steam is $15. Though, considering you need Uplay as well, having that extra DRM might dissuade you from giving this game a try. Thanks for watching this review, but your support I must pursue. I don't mean to seem like a glutton, but please hit that subscribe button. Mine's Twitter and even Twitch, the links in the description make following a cinch. I hope you enjoyed this little rhyme, and it'll convince you to join us next time.